Welcome to Rebel Chaser. My name is Gail, and I've got a video for you from the Huntsville, Alabama Town Council meeting. And in this meeting, an elderly gentleman gets up and tells the story of his interaction and treatment by the Huntsville, Alabama Police Department. And if you have blood in your body, it is going to boil, because the story that he tells is horrible. I'll let you guys watch.
Good afternoon. Some of you already know who I am. My name is Brian Campbell. I've lived in Huntsville 62 years, and I was a victim of this police department. I will preface my remarks by saying, not one day, not 1 minute in my life have I ever been in any kind of trouble. Maybe a speeding ticket. On May the 20th, 2023, I was caring for my wife. Some of you know me. I've known some of you since you were children. I was caring for my wife with Alzheimer's and my disabled daughter. On that day, an incident happened at my residence. Huntsville was dispatched. 2 officers approached my home, and I didn't know why they were there. I inquired why they were there, did not get a response, so I proceeded to close the door to my house. Upon doing so, one of the officers took his foot, jammed it in the door, and forced his way into my home. Asked me to step outside. Upon which time, there were 2. One of them was very professional. I have told him countless times how I was so pleased with the way he behaved. The other one was the officer from hell. He's not currently on this force because during all this, I prevailed in a lawsuit that took over 1 year and $17,000 of my money to defend myself. That officer hit me from behind, which I can't hardly still walk, with his knee, took me to the ground, and beat me mercifully. My attorneys have the photographs. Coleman Hospital has the records. I was handcuffed and roughed up really bad. Placed in a police vehicle. It was May, so it wasn't very hot. It was not running. No air conditioning on, but I began to hyperventilate. I'm a 2-time survivor of cancer and a heart patient. While I was in that vehicle, when one of them finally returned to the vehicle, I was in real bad shape. An ambulance was dispatched and the paramedics. Well, the only problem I had was I couldn't breathe. Once I got air, I was fine. I was then taken by the officer who brutally beat me up to Huntsville jail. On the way to the jail, and I was never allowed to explain anything to him. I was never told I was under arrest. I was never told anything until I got on my way. Well, actually, till I got here. On the way, that officer said to me, "Men like you are nothing but pieces of human infamy." And that's not the words he used. I was married to my wife 52 years. I never touched her, ever. The incident involved, and I was trying to tell them, with her Alzheimer's, she didn't know what she was doing and tried to exit the vehicle while moving. I pulled her back by her hair, and I admitted to that. And that constituted, in your officer's opinion, domestic violence. Anyways, and that was all perpetrated by a 911 call where the person hung up. When I got to the jail, my abuse continued. Maybe it's procedure, I don't know. I was handcuffed to a bench right out there for 3 hours. I say this somewhat shamefully, but I'm a cancer survivor and I'm incontinent. And while I was there, I desperately needed to go to the bathroom. I requested from the officer, and the city hall was right down the hall. And I was handcuffed, was denied. I urinated on myself. Then I was placed in filthy rags, and I'll tell you, I've traveled all around this world, and that's no lie. as a buyer for a major retailer. I've been in every country you can imagine. The facilities in this jail, and I hope they've changed, were filthy. Were feces on the wall, feces on the water fountain, feces all over the floor. Looked like it hadn't been cleaned in 5 years. Have any of you ever went in that jail and looked at it? I don't care if you're a criminal, you deserve better treatment than that. I was denied food and water because on the way to jail, I said, why don't you just shoot me and take me out of my misery? I was put on suicide watch. No food, no water, no nothing. A kind lady jailer come up and had seen my record. She said, Mr. Campbell, I'll get you some water and they don't have to know. She said, I looked at your record. You've never been in any kind of trouble. I said, yes, ma'am, when I was younger, I got speeding tickets, but that's the extent of it. Long story short, I finally talked to one of the 3 chiefs that's no longer here. This gentleman, chief, was a reasonable man, and I finally got to explain my story to him. And he was very empathetic, and I know it was only my word against your 2 officers. And he said to me, I will make a phone call and see what I can do, because I found out that my stay would be 2 days in jail, 48 hours. And I was charged with 2 felonies, domestic violence and resisting. I was told my bond was $2,000. So they proceeded to put me in that filthy jail. I spent the night in that jail. Next day, the chief did as he said. My magistrate came down. It's a Sunday. I had the money cash on me, $2,000. She said, pay your bond and you can go home. I went to pay my bond, and this may be the procedure. If it is, I've never been in trouble. I don't know. But I was told, we cannot take cash on the weekend. So that told me you can't even trust your own police department with cash. But if you use a credit card, we'll let you go home. Reached in, got my credit card. Oh, but by the way, do you council members know this? It's $200 more if you use your credit card.
Oh, wow.
So I paid. I'm ready to go home. By the way, by this time I was not allowed a phone call. I was never told anything about my charges. I called my son. Some of you know him. He's an upstanding citizen, was once a manager of LP down here. He's now a private contractor. He said, Daddy, they're not going to let you go home. I said, what do you mean they're not going to let me go home? He said, well, they told me that you're going to be transferred to Coleman Regional. I said, why? They have you under a suicide watch. You have to be evaluated. So Sunday evening, and believe me, I'm no harm to anybody, and was certainly no threat to those 2 policemen. Neither one of them could have taken me easily. I'm at Coleman Regional. I'm kept overnight. When the doctors saw my beat up body, they asked me, what could have possibly happened? And I told them, the only good thing that came out of that is the nicer of the 2 officers was the one who transported me. On the way to the hospital, I said, young man, tell me how you could possibly think that he could think that I was resisting. His exact words, and I'll never forget them. Because my wife and my wife was dying then. He said his perception was that you were resisting. I said, you were there. Long story short, it came time for discovery. I didn't know anything about discovery. Paid 2 attorneys. They said, here's what's going to happen. They got to present their evidence, and you can present your evidence. Well, Kathy, and a lot of you know my wife, Kathy, a better woman never was. She was on her deathbed. And I called up my attorney, Johnny Berry, and I said, I'm supposed to be there. He said, Brian, don't worry about it. He said, me and Brandon will be there. You don't have to be there. So I stayed with my wife with hospice. I wasn't there. In the meantime, my wife died. A month and a day later, my daughter died. On the night I was sending pictures to the funeral home, 2 more Hansel officers came to my residence to arrest me again. They came to arrest me for bond forfeiture because I didn't show up on that court hearing. My attorneys were both there. They represented me. I paid them well. I'm making these arrangements and getting ready to be taken to jail. My daughter was being buried the very next day. Fortunately, I know Kenneth now. And I wasn't in any shape to call him, but my son Kevin called and he said, look, my daddy, we just lost my sister. You know, he's a good man. Anybody knows him. He said, they just leave him alone? Never told me what the warrant was for, by the way. Kenneth told him, or I don't know if it was Kenneth or who it was, someone later told me the chief told him to just go on and let me turn myself in. Okay, I called my attorneys and told them what happened. I still don't know what the warrant's for. I didn't know it was bond forfeiture. I go on to the cemetery and I bury my daughter. On that day that I buried my daughter, I went to Huntsville, down here to this courtroom, and that judge, who was a joke, that sat right there, read me the riot act and told me, had me handcuffed immediately, and told me he's going to put me under the jail. You were remodeling, so I sat handcuffed out here in the hall for another 3 or 4 hours. During that time, I was told I was being arrested for bond forfeiture. I said, what bond? They said, well, you didn't appear for the discovery. No argument from my part would be heard, because I'm just an average citizen, like all these people here, an innocent average citizen. I was transported to county. I sat in county the night of my... the night of my daughter, she was buried, sat in county, and was going to be put in jail under no bond, 0, because I forfeited my bond, allegedly. My son knows the sheriff real well and the chief deputy. He called and he said, look, I don't know what's going on. And you know, I'm not going to say my dad's innocent or guilty, but we just buried my sister. And they told me to disrobe, go take a shower, put me in the rubber shoes. Well, get ready to put me in the orange jumpsuit. And the desk deputy said, Mr. Campbell, today's your lucky day. And I'm thinking, you just don't know. It's 7 or 8 o'clock at night. I said, well, tell me. He said, you've been released, ROR. I think that's released on your own recognizances. And I was released. We come back in front of this same judge. It continues almost for an entire year at more financial expense. And I'll conclude what I have to say by your police, untrained, uninformed, and you, like the lady before me said, you're the accountable ones. I was a manager of a major retail company, top level, and the buck stopped at me. The decisions to make these people in the roles they're in fall on each of you. Yes. And I ask again, have any of you ever looked inside that jail? And if it's changed, I'm shocked. But anyways, what I have to say don't amount to much, but I got my day and I could say my piece. My son said, well, at least 100 people said, you ought to sue them. Mm-hmm. Well, in the first place, I'm not the kind of man that sues anybody. I've never done anybody wrong in my entire life. I'm a Christian and I believe in treating people Christ-like. Amen. Okay? And I didn't want a pound of flesh, but I never got so much as I'm sorry this happened to you. And Mr. Sawyer, I've known you a long time. Another incident happened, and I had you come to my residence. At that time, you brought the new chief with you on this other issue. I told you a little bit about this story. Your exact words to me in the conversation, what do you expect me to do? And my response was, so help me. If you got a Bible, I'll swear on it. I said, what I want you to do is clean up this town. Clean up this mess. I said, the people of this town deserve it. I'm just one individual. And nobody really cares what I have to say. Imagine if it happened to you, losing your child and your wife, and then being drugged through this crap, and then financial expense on top of that. You know what your response was to me? Do you remember, Jimmy?
I remember exactly the way.
Well, if I'm lying, I'm dying. You looked at me and said, that's why this man right here is the new chief. He is going to clean it up.
Oh, shit. Shit.
He cleaned it up all right.
Yeah, he did.
And I would have never said another word about this. In fact, my son said, Daddy, don't sue him. You've been through too much. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you more hurt. I could barely walk as it is from the injury to my back from that officer. And I agreed with him after praying a lot on it. But when I saw this nonsense, I said, maybe my story's not good. And maybe they'll put me off as a fool like some other people that have stories. But I swear to God, every word I told you is the truth. One thing I left out. At that time, you had 8 police officers. Because the chief told me himself, you had 8. That day, while I was sitting in that squad car in my driveway, and there's a man in this room that can testify to the fact who's my neighbor. 5 squad cars showed up, 7 of your 8 officers, and you would have thought I was a murderer or a drug dealer. Fact. Then one of them told my neighbor in this room, who I don't know if he's going to speak or not, but that night before I buried my daughter, or the funeral, when they came with that warrant, they left. My good neighbor came over to check on me, see if I was okay. When he was walking through my yard, and if I'm misquoting you, sir, you know who you are? He said, one of them officers stopped me, or I asked him what's going on. He said, answer please. We're not through with Mr. Campbell yet. Is that professionalism? I say no. So I conclude my remarks. I love this town. I wouldn't have brought my family here and lived all this time if I didn't. And some of you lived here longer than I have. It just got to have an input to it. If it don't, it's just a continuation of the same thing. And it's happened too many times in my lifetime. And it got worse in the last 3 years. Anyways, I conclude my remarks. I appreciate your time. I hope this sinks in. Yes, I'm mad and angry and upset. Put yourself in my position. How would you feel?
Very good.
I want to ask you, do you remember the officers' names?
The one that beat me up so bad, they let go immediately. I've still got the paperwork in my home. The other officer was a good officer. I will not deny it. He was a wonderful police officer. And he may be one of the ones they kept. But he was professional. Right down
Oh, you know, do you know?
I got it on. I don't know. But I'd be glad to give it to the press or anyone else that wants to know.
Very good story.
Very good.
This man's story makes me so angry that I'm at a loss for words, because the words that I really want to say, I can't say because I'm on YouTube. Just to give you guys a little background on this town of Hentzville is about 3,300 people. They have 8 police officers. It's in Coleman County, Alabama. There are 2 district court judges. Out of those 8 police officers, 5 of them were indicted by a grand jury on felony charges, including the chief. And at this point, I think the entire police force is, if they're not part of those 5, they've been let go or desk duty, that kind of thing. And the policing has been taken over by the county sheriff. But the 2 judges are named Rusty Turner and Chad Floyd. And I don't know which judge this man came in front of, but whichever judge put out a warrant for his arrest the day his wife died, that judge needs to be recalled. That judge himself needs to be sued and brought up on charges. I don't know if judges are allowed to be sued, but he should be. And he should be brought up on charges. And he should be recalled. This story just angers me so much. That man all he did was try to keep his wife from getting out of a moving vehicle. And somebody in the car behind him or at a stoplight or whatever, the car next to him, sees him grab his wife. Thinks, oh, they must be in a fight. She's trying to get out. He grabs her. Well, he doesn't want her to fall out of a moving car. So the police officers that go to his home need to speak with him, not just come in loaded for bear. And then the judge adds insult to injury and says he should be buried under the jail. And the jail isn't suited for dogs. I am just so angry at that entire county. The police, the judges. I'm just so angry. And I appreciate you guys allowing me to bring some more awareness to this. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.